Wake Me Up After the Apocalypse by Evil Goo. Chapter 4. What Kind of Man Is He? Day 72. I haven't written in a while, not since the incident. They finally let me out of quarantine. Trafalgar Law saved my life, which was frankly surprising. Not that he was able to do it, but that he allowed me back on Witheria after being contaminated in the first place. Not that he's in charge here, but he certainly could get his way if he wanted to. No one is powerful enough to stand up to him, push come to shove. But he saved my life. We hovered over Prudence to gather samples for the vine for Law's research. It wasn't the most glorious work, but there are 6 of us now in the expedition team, so we could split it. I didn't volunteer exactly. Everyone was going to take a shift, collecting samples and checking the silent village for supplies. I went first to get it over with. I wasn't scared. Nothing to fear from sleeping people, right? As long as I wore my mask, I was fine. It was the manual labor that I abhorred. We didn't know. We hadn't seen it before. Law had seen husks. We had seen many sleepers. Now we needed a new word. I vouched for raging assholes, but I think most people are just calling them sleepwalkers. I dropped down right into the town square, carrying a pair of pruning shears and several sample bags tucked into my side bag. I was just starting to clip at the vines when I noticed something strange. A tiny purple flower budding up from the Redvine. I contacted Law and he said to grab it. He sounded a bit excited. Maybe it would be useful. At least it was different. Some of the vines themselves were a bit different too, kind of blue-tinged and thin. I store my cuttings and turned to leave. The air was full of spores, but my mask kept me safe. Until, of course, I was stabbed. Funny thing about being stabbed during the end of the world. A face mask is pretty ineffective against a bleeding open wound. Nami! The general cry from the community center was tumultuous when she entered, her mind still cloudy with disbelief, her steps like an automaton even as she was accosted. There were 16 people living on the island, 17 whenever Usopp woke up. When Usopp woke up. It was real, right? She had had numerous dreams, especially near the beginning, where she would stumble upon her crewmates and rescue them. In her dream, she would fight through walls made of redvine, spiky with thorns, unlike in real life, battling her way towards her sleeping nakama, reminiscent of fairy tales with sleeping princesses. She would finally find them all napping on the sunny, perched at the top of a tall and imposing castle. The first couple times she had had the dream, she would usually just kick them awake, angry that they had left her alone. But by the 5th time, she was just sobbing and shaking them. Every single time when Luffy would wake up, he would always laugh and speak in that amused, teasing tone he reserved for times when things were serious, but he refused to take them seriously. "Oi, Nami," he would say. "What do you think you're doing, crying like that? I promised someone you wouldn't do that, so cheer up." Other times, when she reached the top of the castle, they were all husks. Their corpses somehow recognizable despite their thin and withered state. Those dreams usually ended with her waking up suddenly, choking on nothing, gripping her pillow as she waited for her mind to catch up with her conscious state. But this was real. Usopp was real. The room she had stepped in contained 14 of Witheria's residents, and all of them were ecstatic about her entrance. "Tell us, you brought back a new person, yeah? What does he look like?" Ben asked from his post behind the serving counter. He was on meal detail for the week, his wife sitting at the table closest to him with their 2 kids. He was a big man, and even from his post indoors, he was wearing sunglasses. He had a tawny skin tone, like Bee, though he didn't share her bright yellow afro. Haley, meanwhile, took more after her mother, dark features and hair in simple plaits down her back. "Kids," she still thought of them, though Haley was nearly 18 by this point and Bee pushing 12. Teenagers, and they'd completely switched personalities over the years. It must be something about being in that early preteen range that made someone insufferable. Bee rolled her eyes, muttering something about her father, Ben, under her breath that Nami didn't quite catch. She tended to argue with everyone these days, so it wasn't much of a surprise the kid was in a bad mood. She always was. I thought we agreed the next person we brought up was going to be a smoking hot lady. Have we even tried the island of the Amazon chicks? Dion asked, surprising no one. It's a man, then? I wonder what he was doing on that island all alone, Saber, or possibly Rebus, asked. They were identical twins, and Nami was 90% sure they had made up their stupid names when they were first brought up just to fuck with everyone, and the appellations had unfortunately stuck. He was sent there, Nami responded, and was a little surprised at how hollow her voice still sounded. Maybe she was legitimately in shock? Well, it wasn't like she could see the doctor about it. He was a bit busy saving her nakama, because he was alive for real. Nami? She looked up to meet Zifa's gaze and attempted a smile she guessed looked more like a grimace based on the sudden silence in the room. She decided she had better expand on her statement. She'd come in to grab some food and had intended to return to the lab to wait on Law's prognosis, but she supposed she owed her neighbors some kind of explanation. She forgot it was dinner time. She'd been more than a little distracted. We were sent by a devil fruit user a long time ago. He was, well, sort of thrown to Boyne, just like I was thrown to Witheria. Again, the room got very quiet, shocked faces at every table. Rebus, or Saber, had a spoonful of mashed cauliflower suspended in front of his face for several seconds before he placed it in his mouth carefully, as if afraid to make too much noise with that one simple action. You know him? Haley asked, sounding amazed at the extreme coincidence. It was, in fact, pretty fucking amazing. Nami sighed. His name is Usopp, and he's one of my nakama. Another straw hat? Dang, we got a supernova and 2 straw hats on this mad island? Another voice, probably Nasagi, exclaimed excitedly. But Nami was done interacting. She had to get back. She didn't even want to stop home first to change out of her scrubs and slippers. Her old clothes, coated in spores, had been burned on arrival, and her boots and vinyl bag were currently being disinfected. It was too risky, too laborious to attempt to clean porous cotton fabrics or paper properly. The spores seemed to burrow into garments, soak into books like any other mold. If they didn't have a devil fruit user with vast medical knowledge on board, they would have had no idea. They definitely would have been dead by now. It made sense, in a way, how some of the most heavily fortified facilities on the planet had fallen, when you think of that. In the beginning, at least, ignorance was the biggest danger, and even the strongest people in the world were not immune to its influence. In any case, Nami decided the toothpaste green scrubs she was wearing would do just fine for waiting around in Law's lab. In fact, it was practically thematic. She approached the counter, staring at the 2 plates Ben had set out for her, both barely fitting on the tray, with one plate rather precariously balanced over the side of it. She raised a brow, inquisitive, and as the hissing sound of frying vegetables filled the kitchen, Ben looked over his shoulder, calling back, "One's for Law! He's not eating enough." He just hates people, Bee supplied, helpfully. I get it. If I could hold myself up in my lab and have everyone wait on me because I'm so important, then I'd do it too. Zifa casually draped an arm around her older daughter's shoulders as if to hug her, only to reach further to swat at the back of the younger's head. Ow! He's busy, and you are privileged to be able to spend time with your family and neighbors eating meals in the community center. No, sure. There are worse places you could be, her mom said, dealing the finishing blow. Hard to complain about anything to your parents during an apocalypse, Nami imagined. Then again, it was hard for anyone to win an argument with Zifa. She was relentless. "Thanks, Ben. I'll shove it down his stubborn throat if I have to," Nami supplied with a tight smile, her heart not really in the banter. She grabbed the tray, putting all her remaining concentration into not dropping it, and as she reached the door to the community center, she found Zifa there already, holding it open for her with a small smile. That smile on that woman's face gave her the sneaking suspicion that Zifa was not about to leave her alone. It was the smile of someone about to engage in a conversation, and Nami wondered how she could be expected to have so much going on in her head all at once and still answer one of Zifa's interrogations. "So," the woman began, keeping pace with Nami as they walked outside, heading for the oblong wing coming off of the observation deck. "No useful vegetation?" The structure was covered in hexagonal glass, and once served as a weather ball processing center for larger storm systems, but had quickly been converted into a hospital and research lab after Law appeared on the island. It made sense to pick a space connected to the main port and observation deck for quarantine purposes and quick medical treatment for away teams. Nami thought of her own brushes with death over the years and was thankful for the group's forethought. No, everything was rotting. I think we couldn't have found a worse island agriculturally. We'll need to risk going down into a larger farming community or town then. Nami shivered at that, and Zifa noticed. "I know, I hate sending any of you into danger, but I don't think any of you know exactly how tight things are becoming. That disease wiped out too many crops. Our food stores are low. I get it. We'll organize a raid. It'll be fine. Hopefully better than the last time they tried that shit." About a month ago, Nami, Dion, and Ben were chased out of a town by 50 screaming sleepwalkers, one of them a devil fruit user that couldn't quite control her powers. By the time they left, the island was covered with spikes made of hardened wasabi, and Dion had a fancy new piercing straight through his leg that burned like the devil's asshole. His words. Nami herself had been covered with the substance and was half blinded by it. The only reason she survived that run-in was Ben, who literally had to carry her back to the skyboat as she screamed. Populated areas were to be avoided. That was their general rule. But sometimes they needed supplies. Canned food, den mushis, clean packaged clothes, seeds, fertilizer, and antibiotics took precedence, and were better than gold, even to Nami. Boyne is smack in the middle of the Grand Line. We'll try to head for a calm belt and get our bearings with a compass, then choose an island that, hopefully, won't kill us, Nami added, trying to do her main job and focus as navigator. There were limits to what she could do. As the scholars told her first day on Witheria, it all depended on the wind. However, last she checked, they had a good wind coming in from the north, so they may be able to veer towards South Blue. Less chance of devil fruit sleepwalkers, at least, outside the Grand Line. "So," Zifa began, business dispensed with and her real purpose for hounding Nami becoming apparent, "you found a friend of yours?" Zifa was naturally a gossip and no doubt was hoping to get the inside scoop on the new neighbor, and he wasn't even conscious yet. "Yes," she managed without choking. "I thought they were all dead." "Why would you think that? There's always a chance, you know. Maybe we'll all be reunited with loved ones after the doctor figures out how to replicate the bloom." Zifa was too optimistic and a bit of a romantic, characteristics that had once annoyed Nami to no end. Nami was done with hopeful aspirations when it came to her past. She'd grown used to the idea of wiping everything clean, of giving up on everything and everyone from before day one. She had to keep her sanity. It was too much, too hard at the beginning, as she tried desperately to track them down, every island making her heart leap in anticipation, only to crash and burn in impressively crushing disappointment. There was only so much heartbreak she could take. "You don't know my friends. I just thought they wouldn't be stopped by a plant They would push through and wake up and rip the vines from their own ears and hunt me down and then save the world. Zifa had stopped walking, but Nami didn't, so the older woman had to jog a little to catch up, the decorative metal clasps on her thin, complex braids clinking together as she did so. Nami didn't talk much about the straw hats, but when she did, she usually got those kinds of stunned reactions. No one really understood the way they worked and interacted, the complete faith she had in her captain. In fact, she had so much faith that she knew only death could have stopped him. They would die fighting otherwise, so I concluded they had to be dead. Maybe that was a bit backwards. Maybe it meant she had lost faith in him. "But this one isn't dead," Zifa said gently, taking the tray from Nami's hands as it started to shake, the plates clinking as they rubbed against each other, despite her protests against it. "So maybe they're all alive." Maybe. Or maybe Usopp was the exception. He was a normal human like her, after all. She knew he fought the good fight, did what he could to resist the Redvine, but ultimately he had succumbed to it. What of the others? What of the monsters of her crew? Could she imagine them going gently into the embrace of the hallucination? No, she just couldn't picture it. "It'll be hard for him waking up to this," Zifa responded, and Nami appreciated that they at least were off the topic of the rest of Nami's lost crew. Finding Usopp brought all of her earlier hopes and fears to the forefront, and she just didn't want to think about it right now, didn't want to weigh the cost of her pessimism. As she had done every day for nearly 4 years, she needed to focus on what she currently had. She had Usopp. "Yeah, Dion was a mess, and we found him in year 1. She hadn't really considered how she would handle her nakama when he woke up. Gently? Or just dump it all and get it over with? "Dion got over it quickly enough when he woke up to our gorgeous faces," Zifa snorted, shaking her head. "Hopeless bastard." She winked, nudging Nami lightly with her hip as they walked the small cobblestone path up the garden courtyard. "Hey, maybe that'll work here. What kind of guy is he? Women turning to piracy is pretty rare. Did your whole crew all trip over themselves trying to recruit a gorgeous babe like you?" And she had somehow, by some leap, brought it back around to the crew again. Nami managed a tight-lipped smile, shaking her head. "I'm the best navigator any of them could have hoped for. We had one guy on board who was obsessed with me, but that went for any woman with a pulse and great legs. He saved my life a bunch of times. They all did." Oh God, there she went, talking about them. She didn't want to talk about them. Not if they weren't alive. "Usopp is a sharpshooter." There, present tense. "He'll be real helpful here. He can draw and invent things and cut hair, though he's a bit of a coward, so I don't think I'll put him in expeditions." He would be grateful, she thought, to for once be spared being put so readily in the range of fire. She had a feeling fate had it out for him. He always ended up getting dragged along into the worst of it, though that was probably what had led to most of his growth over the months she had known him. Months. She had been a straw hat for months before the events of Saboti had split them all up. Years. It had been years since those days, rose-tinted with nostalgia. "Huh," was her companion's only response, as Nami held the door open for her and carefully balanced the tray. "Huh? What do you mean by huh?" "I mean, it's just not the description I'd expect for a pirate, especially one infamous enough to have traveled with Straw Hat Luffy. I thought they'd all be like you, hard as nails with just a splash of bitch factor." Nami would have laughed at the jab if she could have managed it in the moment, though really it was more of a compliment. Zifa had no idea that the brave face Nami put on was, usually, a front. She was much more like Usopp than she let on. She was too busy wringing her hands in nervousness to respond, trying to figure out why her fingers were so damned cold. She was anxious. She knew that. Anxious to meet him again. Anxious that something would go wrong and she couldn't meet him again. Anxious at the idea that the plant had done something and scrambled his brain, and oh God, what if he wasn't the same as before? Zifa placed the tray on Law's desk, seemingly unperturbed by Nami's lack of a reaction. The lab was high-ceilinged and way too vast, since the building was not exactly designed for the purpose originally. Everything was painfully white and clean. The small desk and chair, some of the few pieces of usable furniture in the room. There were several beds, but they were behind the glass wall that bisected the ballooning space into the quarantine and non-quarantine zones. There was another set of beds beyond a door to the right, Nami knew, for the everyday minor injuries sustained at times by the citizens of Witheria. The office space was cluttered with tall, thin tables full of instruments for measuring, boiling, and grinding, hugged by various vials of liquids that could be hazardous or completely innocuous for all Nami knew. The flowers she had brought in were in the freezer to the left of the space, she guessed, the empty box open on the counter. Law's sword, Kikoku, was placed carefully, meaningfully, on a display holster above his desk. There was symbology to his hanging it up, she knew. Law had a job to do that was more important than taking on any direct fight now. Through the giant window she could see Law, still fully suited up after decontamination, prepping tools on a metal table by the closest bed. Usopp was on it, covered by a sheet up to his chest. His clothes, like Nami's, had been burned. Only the material of Law's biohazard wear was able to be disinfected properly. And it seemed that he had been cleaned of the dirt and plant ooze that had settled on his skin. Nami dragged the desk chair closer to the glass, sitting near the small call box and main door into the space, watching the doctor work with rapt attention, waiting for any signs that things were going well or not. Either way, she would be the first to know. Day 73. I realized my story needed more context, but I ran out of free time. Yesterday was my day on garden duty. I know, girl gets out of quarantine and doesn't even get a day to breathe. I was stabbed by a sleepwalker. The town was full of them. Turns out that sometimes the vine is able to control people. That, or a town full of miraculously uninfected citizens decided to murder a cute visiting girl for no reason. They didn't talk. The man that stabbed me had wide eyes, open but unseeing, his limbs moving in awkward jerks, like a zombie. He made a creepy keening noise when he lunged at me, and there was nothing I could do but fall backwards and try to lessen the impact of the knife to the gut. I was on the ground, and the guy was hovering over me with his knife raised, and I grabbed the only weapon I had on me, my machete. I brought it in case the vines were too thick. It cuts people pretty well, too. I think for just a moment, before the man died, he had this look on his face that was very human, aware, alive. He knew who he was when he died, and maybe I'm just making that up to punish myself. If I was stronger or faster or just paying attention to my surroundings, he wouldn't have had to die. A bunch of others crawled from the quiet houses, and I ran. I felt like I was holding my insides together while I did it. My legs were cramping up, my arms were turning numb and frozen across my sliced stomach. I knew the spores were in me, and I was going to be paralyzed, and I wasn't going to be just waiting for the vine to get me or my friends to rescue me. I was going to be waiting until the horde caught up and stabbed and clawed at me until I bled to death on the cobblestone. I was so scared. Okay, that was very visceral, wasn't it? I'll try to just keep to the facts. This is not a teenage girl's diary. I made it through the coating and into the skyboat. I fell into it, really, but I was so frozen up I couldn't work the controls to float back up. I was sure I was going to die. I managed to turn my head enough to see them. They were stopped. They stopped just outside the bubble coating we had applied to the boat. The goal had been to keep out wandering spores, but apparently it worked to keep out anything related to the Redvine. Long story short, I'm alive because of sheer luck. Law even created a medicine to clear the spores from my system. He made it in only 2 weeks. Crazy! Though Chopper could have done it in 1. He used that weird flower. Everyone started calling it panacea facetiously, because we don't understand how it works, but it seemed to fix me up well. Oh, and he sewed me up so my guts didn't spill out. Also nice. So to recap, coating keeps the vines away better than fire. The Redvine now has mind control powers. In some cases, it's something to do with the vines turning blue. Law's obsessed with purple flowers now, and I owe the doctor a drink or something. Day 74. Is trying to be funny a form of self-soothing? Maybe that's why my nakama all had such great senses of humor, or thought they did. We all have so much trauma, character. I think I may be developing a very acute sense of ironic awareness.